I just have to tell you, I had planned to go to the mountain, to my home. When I got to Spokane, I was going to go home, and I was going to write down what I was going to say to you today. It didn't work that way. This morning, when I was having my worship, I was just telling God, I can't do this. I'm not prepared. You know what's going on right now all over this world in my family. I can't do this. And I just turned in my Bible randomly to Isaiah 51. And there's a verse in there that says, I will put my words in your mouth. So I have no notes. I have no plans, but God is going to put words in my mouth. So it's really hard to know where to start. I mean, I could tell you so many things, but I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk to you about the last 2 years. A little past 2 years ago, we had a school in the jungle. We had lots of students. They were learning about God. Everything was going great. It was an incredible experience down there in the jungle, but then that came to a screeching halt when the government asked us to move. And that's a long story in itself, but I'm not going to tell it to you. So what happened is we ended up moving to this little village up in the mountains, which it's cooler up there, which is a good thing. It's really hot in Thailand. But we moved to this little village, and it just so happened to be a Po village. Now, my husband and I don't speak Korean, but I understand a lot of Korean because I've studied it a lot. Something to do with an old brain. I guess I'm just not capable of learning languages, but I try real hard. So, but what I do understand is Ska Korean, and my sons speak fluent Ska Korean, but none of us speak Po. So what happened is we found ourselves in this village where we don't really understand the people around us during hot season, and we had to build houses, something to live in. At that time, we were thinking we would rebuild our school. And then we found out, like within a short amount of time, that the government was not going to allow that because our students were Korean. And anyway, it's a long story, but we couldn't do that. So then rainy season hit. We got our buildings built. Rainy season hit. And this is where my story of surrender started. You know, to go from where you are working for God and things are going really good, and then all of a sudden it's taken away from you, you have to kind of examine yourself. It's like, why is this happening? Can God not use me? You know, am I not good enough? And that's kind of how we were feeling. But God is so good. He is so good. You know, I think sometimes He has to take us apart so that He can teach us. And He was teaching us the joy of surrender. I didn't know it at the time. I didn't understand it. But I had to learn to say, and this is that whole rainy season, I had to say, I have to be willing to be nothing for God. And that's hard to do when you want to be a missionary. When you're in Thailand and you're surrounded by people that don't know Him. And just say, okay, God, I'm swinging in a hammock. I'm doing nothing. At least it felt like it. Okay, I still have 4 orphans that I was teaching. And, you know, it didn't come to a screeching halt, but it felt like it. But during that time, we realized how badly we needed God because we didn't understand. It was so hard to be there and feel like you're not doing anything. Even if we were. Well, especially with me, when I realized that I needed to be willing to be everything or nothing for God, then He started speaking to my heart. And He started telling me, you know, your children are your first responsibility. And my children, you know, I actually have 5. My older daughter was at school at that time. But all of them come from very traumatic backgrounds. All of them have predispositions to evil, and they can be really discouraging at times. You know, they're really good little girls. Well, some of them are, to your face. But what they do behind your back is not so good. And, you know, when you're just a mother and you're living in the mission, I mean, I'm thinking missionary work is like Bible studies and evangelism and things like this, and God is saying, no, it's raising your kids. And so I started examining our lives. What can I do? I was not a patient person. I'd been a missionary for 6 years already, and God was showing me that I am not patient. You know, when they're being really, really naughty, hours and hours and hours and hours on end. You know, I have one that's a little bit demonic sometimes, and she screams and screams and screams and screams and screams. I found out that I thought, and everybody around me, well, at least some people, thought that I was a patient person, but I wasn't. And so through this experience and all the things I was going through in this time to stop and think, there was nothing to do. We could see the villagers sometimes. It was really exciting. We'd look out the window, and they'd be peeking through the bushes looking at us. But they wouldn't come see us. And but anyway, we got kind of bored. You know, I teach school for the girls half the day, but then during work time in the afternoon, because we normally do half school, half work, it was pouring down rain. And up on the mountain, it's cold, and so you can't just work in the rain because you freeze to death. So in the afternoons, we'd get bored, and finally Jason, my son, he's like, okay, Mom, we're going to fix this. And so he went into the bedroom, and he brought out the Bibles, and he said, okay, what's the Bible say about the state of the dead? Give me a Bible study. So we started making a habit of this. Every afternoon, we pull out our Bibles, and we would just study. And, you know, the girls, they're playing in the house. It's a small building, okay? It's not like you can go somewhere else. But anyway, we're having our Bible studies. They're playing in the living room. But at the end of that rainy season, that time, well, okay, maybe not quite that soon. But anyway, the results of that were 3 baptisms. 2 of my girls were baptized, and my daughter-in-law. And so, you know, when I thought I was wasting my time and doing nothing, God was working. Now, after that, when we moved to this village, there was a lot of the people that really wanted us to come. But there was one troublesome family that was trying to turn the whole village against us. They were saying, oh, these rich foreigners are going to come in here with all their money, and they're going to hire us and make us, you know, do all their work, and it's going to be like they'll pay us hardly anything. And when Jason heard that, he told me, we got to prove that that's not true. So he wouldn't even buy a weed eater. And if you've ever lived in the jungle before, you know that the jungle grows pretty fast. So every afternoon, we'd be out there with our machetes, cutting the grass. And the villagers are walking by on the road, peeking through the bushes. You know, we're like, well, at least they know we know how to work. And then we built our house, and we dug using our backhoes, that's our back and our hose, an entire hillside. My husband calculated it when we were done. We had dug 21 dump truck loads of dirt out of that mountain by hand. And that in itself was a miracle because I have a very bad back. I'm not supposed to bend over or lift anything. And I worked with my girls every day, and we dug out that hillside. Then we built a cement house the hard way. We have a big bucket where we mix our cement by hand. If you ever tried to do that, it's not good for your back. But we built this entire house without the help of anybody until at the very end, we had the walls up, we had the roof on, But we didn't have the plastering done, and Jason, Shoshana, Roy, none of us knew how to do it. And we tried a little bit, and it looked terrible. And finally, my husband had to leave. He came back to America, and I told my son, we just can't do it. We need to hire somebody to help us. And so we tried. Jason went into the village, and we'd been making friends slowly in the village, so he had a few people he could talk to and ask for help. And he went in there and he said, you know what, we're trying to plaster the walls and we need some help. And his friend said, okay, I'll get together a crew and we'll come over. So they did. And they came and they plastered my house. I mean, within the first day, they had half of it done. And I was so excited. And so at the end of the day, I went to give them their money, and all of them, they went like this. And I was like, you just worked all day. That's really hard work. You need to take the money. And I figured, well, maybe they don't want to take it to me because I'm a foreigner. So I gave it to my daughter and said, make him take it. Make him take it. And they're like, no. They said, you are a part of our village now. When we need help, we'll ask you. And when you need help, you ask us. And that was the beginning of the acceptance by the village. Well, we got the house plastered, we got it painted, we got all the stuff done, and then Jason and Shoshana and Becky also had to leave, and that left me at home with just the little girls, which, if you knew the whole situation, you'd say, ah! my little girls are wonderful, but they're not easy, especially by yourself. But we were left there in Thailand by ourselves, and one day, the head woman was talking to my daughter, and my daughter was sick, Esther. I don't remember what was wrong with her now, but she had something physically wrong with her, and the head woman said, why don't you go to the hospital? And she says, oh, I don't need to go to the hospital. My mom takes care of us. And the head woman said, that's interesting. Well, I didn't know anything about this conversation. I wasn't there. The first thing I knew about it, the head woman came over towing this really old lady and this really old man, and they came underneath my house and sat down, and she said, her knee hurts, and his back hurts. You need to fix it. And I'm like, ah! I don't know what to do. I looked at her knee. I mean, I have no real training. I'm an EMT. That's it, okay? Just basic stuff. So I'm looking at her knee. It's not red. It's not swollen. It's not hot. I don't see anything. And I'm like, well, I mean, did you hurt it? She says, no. I don't know what to do. I really don't know what to do. And so I turned to the head woman and I said, would it bother you if I asked a nurse to come? She's like, oh, please, yes, I need a nurse. And I said, okay, I can do this. Wrong thing to think. So I put out in my newsletter and I did some other things. I requested a nurse to come. And I waited and waited, but no nurse came. And all this time, God is kind of trying to get through to me. He's like, I put you here. And I felt so bad about that old couple that I did nothing to help, that I went home and I just prayed and I said, you know, God, if you want me to do something, you're going to have to tell me what to do because I don't know what to do. And so the first thing I was impressed to do was to unpack my medicine. I'd never done that. When we first went over there, I was working in a porch clinic, and then, so I knew kind of what the sicknesses were. I didn't really have to do much myself other than just help with the treatments. But anyway, so when I was done there, I had gone to Chiang Mai, and I'd bought lots of medicine. I had antibiotics. I had just everything I thought that might be needed in the village. But when I went to unpack it all, Every single drug was ruined. There was not one of them that was good. But at the same time, I had a lot of natural remedies that my friend in Oregon had sent me years before. Nothing was ruined. And I said, you know what? I think God's trying to tell me something here. And so I got out my little supply. I didn't have a lot. And I set it on my shelves. I said, well, if anybody else ever needs help, that's what I have. That's what God wants me to use, I guess. And so it wasn't very long, and the neighbor lady came over. By this time, they're starting to the girls are starting to be able to understand them. I still can't understand them at all. They speak Po. I don't understand it. But some of them speak a little bit of Scots, so we were starting to get along pretty good as far as being able to communicate. And she came over, and she spent a little while there, and as she was leaving, she just kind of offhand, she said, I think my father's dying. If you can do something, please do it. And I was thinking, that sort of sounded like a call from God. I wonder if I'm supposed to do something. I really don't feel like I can do anything. But, I'm here, and he put me here, and so I'm willing, whatever God wants me to do, I'll try. So we went over to the village, and I found this old man, and he was lying on the floor in the bedroom. He was skin and bones, and he had bronchitis. Well, right before I went to the village, I was having lunch, trying to get ready to go, and so I had my medical books out, and I just happened to open it to bronchitis. And so I thought of things that I had at home, and I thought, oh, I actually have a bottle of that stuff, the desert parsley, I think it was, desert parsley blend. It's supposed to be good for the lungs. And so I went racing home, got some, garlic, and I don't remember what all I gave him, but I gave him a bunch of stuff. I brought some milk and just things that would, soy milk, that is. And anyway, went back and gave it to him. Now, his village was in an area that was almost impossible for me to get to because it's a horrible road, and my back is bad. Even riding in the truck, it's really hard on me. But so I could only go once a week. So I gave him the stuff the first week, and then the following week we went back, and his lungs were clear. But he was still not doing it. He'd lost more weight. And I didn't know what was going on, but I prayed for him. I asked him if it was okay. I prayed for him each time, but I'd say, do you want me to pray for you? And he's like, he was eager to have us pray for him. And his family was eager for us to be there. But then I found out that I had told them the week before that he needed to drink a lot of water. Well, that week they told me, oh, we don't give him water because then he has to go to the bathroom. Anyway, week after week after week, we watched him decline. His lungs collapsed, or one of his lungs collapsed. I had no clue as to what to do, but we kept trying, and we kept praying for him and for his family, and he ended up dying, and that was really, really tough. I think I have written down in my little book. For the disheartened, there is a sure remedy. Faith, prayer, work. Faith and activity will impart assurance and satisfaction that will increase day by day. Are you tempted to give way to feelings of anxious foreboding or utter despondency? In the darkest days, when appearances seem most forbidding, fear not. Have faith in God. His infinite love and compassion never weary. Fear not that he will fail of fulfilling his promise. He is eternal truth. Never will he change the covenant he has made with those who love him. And he will bestow upon his faithful servants the measure of efficiency that their need demands. Prophets and Kings 164 and 165. I was afraid that my helping them was at an end. But it wasn't. I don't understand it to this day, but it wasn't. The floodgates opened, and people kept coming and coming and coming. And then I started to really get worried because, I started making this little medicine for them. It was like garlic and ginger and turmeric and limes. And then I'd blend it in the blender, and then I'd add honey, strain it and add honey. And I was just giving them that because I figured, well, that covers about everything. I don't know if it's any good or not, but that's what I was giving them, and they seemed to be getting better. And that was kind of amazing because I don't know anything. I'm nobody. But that was something that God told me to do, and so I started doing it. Well, then I hurt my back again, and I had to spend a month laying down. And I discovered that that's actually a really big blessing. You know, when you have to lay down for a whole month, you have time for study. And last year when I was here, a friend of mine gave me a set of books that were on medical things, and I had never had time to even look at them. But while I was down for a month, I had time to look. And so I got out one of these books and I started reading, and I couldn't put it down. It was like every spare moment I'm reading, I'm like, this is what the answer is to my prayers. This is telling me what I can do with natural things to help my people. But then after reading through the first 2 books, I was like, you know what? The problem is I don't have this stuff. You know, I have a few things here and there. I've got garlic, I've got ginger, I've got the basics, but I don't have the herbs that could actually help this lady or this lady or this lady, and I don't know what to do. And at that point, we had a volunteer staying with us, and she's like, well, why don't you ask? I'm like, oh, no, If you know me, I'm very shy. I know most people don't know that, but I'm incredibly shy, and I'm not going to go ask somebody. And she's like, well, how is God supposed to help you if you don't ask? God really likes to stretch us. You know that? He doesn't want us to have those fears in our hearts. So in my newsletter, I decided to compromise. I told them that, you know what, I've got this list of things that I need, and so if anybody's interested in knowing what it is, I'll send it to you. I got 4 responses, and it was incredible. It was so incredible. The first group, they bought me little bags of each thing on my list, and it was just enough to keep us going. And during this whole time, the patients keep coming and coming and coming, and it gets worse. They start asking me to do harder and harder things. You know, they don't come to me until after they've gone to the hospital and nothing has worked. And so the things that they bring to me are horrible. I mean, like, there was this one guy. He came to me right after going to the hospital. He'd gotten stabbed in the leg by a tree. They're cutting in their rice fields, and somehow this tree, they cut them kind of sideways so they're sharp, and it had gone into his leg. So he had this really terrible puncture wound. Well, then it got infected. And over here, you know, you see an infection. Over there, you see an infection. You know, it's not like little things. I was looking at his leg going, gangrene? You know, we could lose this leg. And I'm going, God, what do? I don't know what to do. This is too much for me. He's like, it's not too much for me, Lisa. We can do this. It's like, okay, what am I supposed to do? Charcoal, flax seeds. Okay, got it. So every day, every morning, every night, we went to his house. We did a charcoal flaxseed poultice. We did this for weeks, and we saw that infection go down like this, and it was almost totally gone, except for where the hole was in his leg, and I'd been trying to keep the hole open so it could drain, and it was still draining. Just in that one little area, there was still infection, and I was like, I've been working on this for weeks. Now what am I supposed to do? And my son, Jason, he has no medical training other than what I've told him. But he's like, you know, Mom, I think we need to open it up, and we need to see if there's something still in there. I'm like, surgery? Me? Huh? No way! But we talked to him. We said, you know, I think you should go back to the hospital, and you should, have him open that up. And he's like, nope, I'm not going to the hospital. You're going to have to do it. I'm like, no, you don't understand. I am not a doctor. I am not a surgeon. I'm not even a nurse. You need to go to the hospital. He's like, nope. He says, I'll be over to your place, and we can do this. Well, he came. And between Jason and I, we had figured out, Dr. Hamilton had taught Jason how to give lidocaine shots in the mouth. Well, it works on the leg, too. It was great. So we got it all numbed up, and then we're like, okay, well, I do have a scalpel, so how do you suppose you do this? You know, I mean, we've never done this before. So we thought, well, we'll just make a little tiny hole so it's not too big, and then we'll just see if we can see in there. Well, you can't see in there. There's blood. But we were able to get out a little bit of bark. And I thought, well, maybe that was the whole problem. Maybe that'll take care of it. And so I thought, well, now that we got the stuff out, we're going to put people paste in there, and that'll heal it up and seal the hole. So we did. And for a couple of days, it worked. It was fine. But then the infection started coming back. And so he came to see us, and I said, oh, dear, we're going to have to start doing charcoal poultices again. We'd done it by this time for a month. 1 month of charcoal poultices at morning and evening. And I'd put him on a natural antibiotic, too. And it was like, I was so over my head. I did not know what to do. But I kept praying, and God saying, simple means, you can do this. Well, a couple of days later, he came to me for his evening poultice, and a new hole had opened up in his leg, and it was pussy and draining and stuff. And I was cleaning it, and I looked at that, and I saw something. And Jason just happened to be walking down to the house at that very moment, and I'm like, Jason, look, I think there's something here. What is this? So he grabs the tweezers, and he started pulling and pulling and pulling. And I'm thinking, is this a tendon? No, it was a sliver this big, that wide, that thick. It was huge. It's like a small tree in his leg. But you know what? That was the end of it. It healed beautifully. It was perfect. And you can't keep secrets in the villages. Within the next few weeks, we'd done 4 surgeries. But let me see, where is it? I wrote down a few quotes that this is what God told me through Second Selected Messages 3:46. Natural means used in accordance with God's will bring about supernatural results. So having to do things that we are not qualified for make us 100% dependent upon God, and that's exactly where he wants us to be. Now, at the same time, I have to admit that I study every day. While the girls are studying in school, if I'm not having to help them, I'm studying. I'm learning everything that I can. But God needs us to be in a position of surrendering even our usefulness to him. If he is not the one who's in control of our lives, we have nothing to offer. While Jason and Shoshana and Roy and Becky were in America, the head woman asked me to go into the village to check on this lady that was pregnant. She said, she's really old and she's pregnant. I need you to check her. And I'm thinking, Grandma? Well, she was 40. Makes me feel ancient. So we went and checked on her, and everything looked fine to me. I don't know what I'm looking for anyway. So then it started pouring down rain, and so as we were leaving, we went and ran underneath this roof. And the head woman and my girls and I, and it's pouring down rain, and the head woman turned to me. Now, this is a Buddhist lady. She is not a Christian in any way, shape, or form, but she turned to me and she said, you know what? You're not here just to live in your house. She said, you were sent here for a reason. She said, I need your help with this village. I can't do it by myself. And then she started to tell me that there were people in this village that were starving to death. literally. And I was shocked. We'd lived there for over a year, and I had no idea. People right next to me are starving to death. And, I was alone, just me and the girls. And but I asked her, I said, I want to know who they are, and I want to know where they live, and I'm going to help them. So the girls and I went home, and we went through our pantry. We made up little bags. We were taking the food off of our own table because we didn't have anything else. And we made up these little bags, and then we went and we gave it to the people that were starving. What the problem is over there is that when the people get old and they're no longer able to work in their rice fields, if they don't have family that can take care of them, they have nothing. It's not like they can just, get help somewhere. They can't. So they just die. And, if you're a Christian, you just can't let that happen. So we took the food. I don't remember what day it was. I think it was like a Sunday that happened. By Thursday or Friday, a friend of ours emailed, and he said, I've got this terrible problem. He said, they have an orphanage, and people in Thailand, they like to do charitable deeds. And so he had groups of hundreds of people coming and giving him food and rice and soap and everything imaginable. He said, I just have too much stuff. My storage rooms are full. Can you please take some of this stuff off of my hands? Can I? It makes me wonder if it's actually even possible to sacrifice for God. Because you give what you have, and then he just pours it. I didn't have room to receive it, literally. He brought a huge truckload of stuff, and Becky wasn't there, so I ended up stacking her room floor to ceiling with supplies, and I had rice, and I had food, and I had soap, and I had enough. They had a list. The head woman had, by this time, made a list of all the stuff, all the people in the villages that were needing help. I went to every single person on the list, and I was able to give them food. Now, I didn't continue to do every person on the list because I found that some of them could get stuff the other ways. But at this point, we have, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 or 8 families that we feed every single week. And the amazing part about it is when I have money, I go buy the food for them. When I don't have money, God sends the food for them. Every time. I have never had nothing to give them. And, it's just the more we give, the more we receive. And God gives from going from discouragement and feeling like we were doing nothing, we found so much joy and so much purpose. And as we went into the villages to give out the food, people started gathering, and they would say, my knee hurts. Is there anything you can do about this? And I don't know what to do, but I asked God, and I found this oil that felt really nice when you put it on your skin because it's like hot. And so I figured, well, if it's hot, it's probably going to increase the circulation. So I'll try that. And so I started giving them, like, your knees hurt? Try this. And so they'd take it, and boy, now when I go to the village, I have to be stocked up on that stuff. People come from out of the woodwork asking me for, do you have some of that oil? I need some of that oil. But, it's amazing what God has done. Now we are working in 4, 5? Becky, do you know? How many villages are we? 4? Well, okay. I'm counting the other village where that guy came for help recently. So that was, there's 5, I think. Anyway. And people are telling us, like, you're going to have a hospital here by the time all the villages hear about what you're doing. And I'm so humbled by it all because I know nothing, and God knows everything. And he can use us if we're willing to be nothing or to be everything for him. And he gives us so much joy. I have so much more to say, but it's so much that I'm afraid that I can't say it right now. But I want you to pray tonight that I'll be able to stay to speak again tomorrow. There's like a really bad situation going on right now where I should be somewhere else, but this is where God wants me. And so I'm here. But I'd like to tell you the rest of the story tomorrow. To live to self is to perish. It is the Spirit of Christ to give and to sacrifice self for the good of others. And that's found in Christ Object Lessons 259. And that's what I discovered this last couple of years. When we're concentrating on how we're feeling, like I was feeling useless and, oh, I'm not important anymore, I lost my school and I'm doing nothing. And that's when we're thinking about self, okay? But the Spirit of Christ is to give. So the biggest blessing God could have given me was a work to do, and that's what he gave us. He gave us a work to do for him, things that I can do with my children. And when we work for God, he gives us so much joy. It's incredible. When we go to the villages and we come back, we're just like on top of the world. It is so incredible to see these people and how they're responding. And, I can't personally talk to them still. But somehow God has just given me such a love for them that I never knew was possible. When you look at if you look at them from an outsider's perspective, they probably are kind of repulsive because they have black teeth, they chew betel nut, whatever. I don't see that anymore. I just see beautiful, beautiful people that God loves, and he sent us there to help them, even though we didn't know how to help them. I have one more quote I want to read. This is our goal as a family. The completeness of Christian character is attained when the impulse to help and bless others springs constantly from within. We don't have that constantly, that part down yet. It is the atmosphere of this love surrounding the soul of the believer that makes him a savor of life unto life and enables God to bless his work. And it doesn't matter how many good deeds you're doing. If it isn't what God's asking you to do, it's the wrong thing to do. And God has given us service for others to prepare us for his kingdom.